And we're live with Al Park, one of the funniest comedians that I've ever had the opportunity to share the same night with. So Al, how's it going? How's it going, man?
It's good. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. So if I could just jump into this real quick, I was looking up. So 2014, you won the Boston Comedy Festival.
That's true.
And then a week later, you won the Cleveland Comedy Festival.
2 weeks later, I think.
Oh, yeah. 2 weeks later. Okay.
Yeah.
That's an incredible run right there, right? I mean, were you able to parlay that into? If this was 1988, you would have had your own sitcom already.
It was the peak of my career. Yeah, it's never been nearly as good. Yeah.
Oh, please.
No, but that was it. That was a real high point there for those 2 weeks, and then yeah, it didn't really kind of translate into too much, but it was good. It was a great little stretch there.
So what did you do? What did you do after you left after you got done doing the Cleveland one? Were you starting to enter more festivals, or were you just trying to, just get your name out there and tour and stuff like that?
I did one more. I did the Seattle International Comedy Festival the following year, and that one was the hardest. That was probably the best festival. That's probably the high point because that was a month long, and I got to the finals there. So
okay.
That was harder than Boston or Cleveland. I finished fourth. But that was like a month. There was like 32 people. So I finished fourth out of 32.
Yep.
And I finished like first, there was 15 shows and I finished first, I think 10 nights out of 15.
Wow.
So, but when I was like first heading into the finals.
Right.
I ate it in the finals because there was another fat dude. And then there was a guy that was just a really great dude who was just won every night. And he just was awesome.
Who was that? Do you know who that was? Do you remember his name?
Dino Archie. He did. He ended up doing Kimmel. He does. He's a comedian kind of. He does a lot of. He lives in Vancouver. He's a great dude. Very funny.
Why is everyone from Canada funny? All the best comedians are from Canada.
He's a friend of. He's a good friend. He works the Comedy Store sometimes. He's a good friend of that guy. God, I wish oh man, I'm gonna forget his name because I'm old. But that guy he was on that show with Ron Funches. That he's like a modern day Dane Cook kind of guy. He does a lot of act outs. He had that sitcom with like Whitney Cummings and I don't know what his name.
Is it Dax Shepard? No.
Not Dax Shepard. He's pretty famous stand-up, but just stand-up. I could look it up, but he's like he did a special in New Orleans, and
all right,
God, he's on Netflix or something like that. But anyway, he's like a Dino Archie. He's great. But I did Seattle, and then after that, yeah, that's when I kind of started like working as a comic. That's when I started headlining, and that's basically when I had like an hour of material or 45 minutes, and I started like working. Professionally as like the regionally popular comic that I am.
Now, when did you first start doing comedy? Like what year?
You were there, right? 10 years ago. 10 years ago. Yeah. 10 years and 2 months ago. So with Dana Cairns, yeah.
So I'm like I'm like a talent scout.
Yeah, you were there at the beginning.
And I said, I'm like, hey, man, you're really funny. Would you like to do the show? And then next thing you know, you go on to win all these festivals and everyone's like, oh, man, Al Park is so funny. But what do you think about the comedy? What do you think about the comedy scene in general? Like worldwide compared to maybe when we were growing up in the 80s and early 90s? You think it's harder or easier to make it?
I don't know. What's funny is I haven't thought about this a lot lately. I think what's weird now is that there's no comedy. So it's very strange. And there's no, like, you can't go outside and you can't even go into a club. And so I don't know. I think it's a really interesting time now because we don't even know what's happening with live performance. Like things we used to take for granted, we can't really take for granted anymore. Like, I don't think Zoom comedy is going to take off, for example, but like something that's happening now with, something that's happening now because of this whole Corona thing is probably going to stick. Some weird idea, some Zoom game show or some Zoom podcast. Maybe this kind of thing is going to happen. TikTok or some shit like that is going
Mm.
to keep going, or comedy's changing, just the same way life is changing. People that are now working from home, some of them may not go back to working in the office after that,
Right.
and so comedy's always changing, and the internet changed things. And so I think it was just easier to do stuff in the 80s because there were less people doing it. People had less options. Like when I go to the Midwest or something like that, there's more people that come out to see comedy. There's so many more comedy clubs in Ohio.
Really?
You go to Ohio, there's a shit ton of comedy clubs, and people fucking go to comedy in Ohio. Because if you ever been to Ohio, there's not a lot to do in Ohio. It's a very flat state. There's nothing to do. It's pretty, kind of boring and ugly. But there's just a ton of clubs in, like, if you go to the Funny Bone, I work for their chain, and they have a club in like Columbus and Toledo and Cleveland and like Akron or whatever. It's like their whole chain is like, they have like 15 clubs, and like 11 of them are in like within like 300 miles of each other. And when you think about Boston, we don't even have one. We have like one or two clubs of the same size. We have like Laugh Boston, or so there's just not stuff that's competing with that type of entertainment out there. And in the 80s, people came out, and then there were less comics, so fewer comics, so you just had less competition. And now it's just, I think it's harder because there's more options, for entertainment and things like that. So I think it's harder. Yeah. But it's also the comedians are better, but if you're funny, you're funny. You know what I mean? Like, you're always going to get. It's not like I'm a great marketer, or I'm some great, like, I have a Tumblr for a website. I don't spend a lot of time sending emails. I still get work, and I still get. But I think as far as like having an actual career that is like more than playing the local rooms or things like that, it's a little. You have to. I think you got to figure out how to to do that. I think it's harder because there's just thousands of people really trying to break through, and you got to be I think you got to be a lot better businessman. You can't just be like a funny guy and then somebody works hard for you and figures out what your niche is, because I don't think there's enough money in it now to do managers or people,
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things I was telling somebody, I'm like, you have to be like really good at technology now if you want to try to compete with the young. You have to be on TikTok, Instagram. You got to know how to edit videos and all that stuff, and that's a lot of work. You got to have a social media manager. Like, if you really want to get to that, that meteoric rise that some people might have, right? Unless you just get discovered, I guess.
Well, that's the thing about comedy. It's super fun to go on stage and do stand-up, right?
Yeah.
But then, like, if you win a festival or you do that, like, the thing you do to do that is you work hard, you write jokes, and you perform them night after night, and it's so unbelievably enjoyable. And then you go to a festival like Seattle or something like that, and I won like 9 nights in a row or whatever, and then I get to like industry night, and then I like won the industry night where the industry's judging. So it's all these people that are like agents and managers, and they're judging, and then it's over. And like, I didn't get a single business card from them. And I'm not like trying to be bitter or anything like that.
Really?
But it's because I'm like 41 at that point, and I look like this. So it's not like anyone was like, this guy's on, we're gonna put him on fucking Guy Code or whatever.
I mean, who cares? Like, didn't Dangerfield make it when he was like 50?
Yeah, but I mean, you got to have a shtick or whatever, and whatever it was,
right.
That thing in me or whatever, which is totally fine. It's a business, and so other people were kind of, talking and getting things and whatever, not getting things, but just having like meetings and things like that. But then the next day there was like an industry roundtable, and like all the people were basically saying, they were on stage and they were saying like exactly what you're saying. You got to get on, you got to do this. You got to get up in the morning, you got to write 17 tweets.
Right.
And then you got to do the thing. It sounded like, literally sounded like an MBA seminar. You got to take accounting 101, and then you got to fucking get your spreadsheet out. And you got to do like 17 unfun things for 4 hours every morning. And then you're like, who wants to, like, and I think, honestly, that's why there's a lot of unfunny comedy. Does that make sense? I think there's a lot.
I agree.
Really good at working hard and not that great at being funny. I'm not being like a jerk about that. I just think
you're right. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, that's why when you see people who are truly funny, and also really productive, that's like amazing. That's just, those are the people that are like a Michelle Wolf or something like that. Like somebody like that just is a beast of a writer. Sam Morrill, just like a beast of a writer, like just gets up and just writes and writes and then pumps out content, is on social media, does that, but then backs it up by being hilarious and funny, but treats it like a job, because that's the part that's hard for me, is that it's an amazingly fun thing to do than the 45 minutes on stage, but then it's just, when you start to do the other stuff and treat it like it becomes a job, it's a little less fun,
Yeah, I mean, if you can get the financial backing to be able to do that other stuff right during the day to fall back on. But I'll tell you what, there was a time where I thought, wow, comedy is taking a turn in a different direction, is when Greg Giraldo, who I think is one of the funniest people of all time, wasn't like, I would talk to him like, Greg Giraldo, he's so funny, like, who's Greg Giraldo? I'm like, you don't know who Greg Giraldo is? And like, I felt like he wasn't getting the same opportunities as other people. And I'm like, man, this guy is one of the funniest people, that I've ever seen. And I see it now with a lot of people who I know in Boston. I'm like, if this was 1990, this guy would be the funniest person. This guy would be the most famous person in America. And it's just so weird with like, the TikTok generation, and people want like 7-second comedy clips. It's very interesting.
It's interesting, and it's also strange because, technology is moving at such a strange pace, at such a fast pace, that I sometimes think, I wonder what, I don't know what live entertainment looks like in 5 years, because I think there's always a place for it, but I think I don't know what it looks like, because I heard somebody was telling me they did a show. I was listening to a podcast, and I heard somebody went back and did a show in Texas or something like that, where they've opened up, and said it was like, it was like a 25% crowd because they're spaced out.
Yeah.
They just said that it sounded like a horrible setup, and they just said the audience was incredible. They were just so happy to be out.
Right.
And, you kind of hope that's, they were like, it's like the old days. They're just so, you kind of hope that happens, and when we go back, it happens, and it kind of continues like that. And I think that desire to kind of congregate will always be there, and we'll always want to be out. Like, hopefully we don't just end up getting very socially awkward and all just because we never go out anymore. We don't keep, because I don't think and I'm socially awkward. I don't like being at parties or talking to people, but I love having that mic and being in front of people and delivering, that having that experience. But yeah, you just, who knows? Like, we didn't know what TikTok was. We didn't know what social media was. So
right,
what the next thing is,
Are you on TikTok?
I'm not on TikTok. What's funny too is when I was in college, I used to do like interpretive dance for people. When I got drunk, I would do I would just put on music, and I would do like I would literally do like make up weird interpretive dance. So I was doing TikTok in like 96.
Right.
But live for people. But now, like, I don't think anyone wants to see an old person do TikTok. And
I'm on TikTok.
It would be probably good if I was like, if they had it then, but it's just, I don't know. I don't take drugs anymore, so maybe I'm not ready to get on TikTok right now.
Yeah, I'm on TikTok. I have 4 videos. My kids, they're like, oh, I want to make a TikTok video. So I make them a TikTok video, like my 5 and 7-year-old. And then they're like begging me. Now I put them on private so that nobody can see them. Only me, because I don't want them to be out into the internet world yet. And it's like, how many likes did I get? I'm like, oh, nobody liked it, but it's like they're 7 years old. They're obsessed with the likes, because their friends have it, and their friends are telling them how many likes they get. Right?
Isn't that the funny thing about it? That's like the thing about comedy, is that you start out being a funny person to your friends, right? Like that, I was so free when I was doing that. From like when you're first, that's like the whole thing of comedy, is that you start out being the funny guy for your friends.
Right.
Then you have to learn how to do this professionally. It's almost like being a good cook or whatever, and then you got to learn how to be a chef. And so it's like there's this arc where you get worse at it before you get better, but it's like, it's sometimes, and during that thing, even though it's this amazing thing, there's a part where maybe the joy kind of can get taken out of it. So maybe like when you're 15 and you're TikToking, that maybe that's the best age, because when you're fucking 15, you're just like, look at me, I just invented this fucking dance, right? And then you just hit send, and it's 3,000 likes later. You're just like, that's pure. But maybe if by the time that person's like 21 and they got like a TikTok agent, and they're worried about click views. They're like doing this like 4 times, and then they're like fucking sitting there going, I don't know.
Right.
Did I do that? Or should I do fucking this, that? And then they put it out there, and if they don't get the same, and then they call they're overthinking it. Suddenly it's a job, and it's not, that's the thing. That's the difference between like being funny and, being free. And then suddenly it's it's work.
Now, what is your style? Are you a joke writer where every word you say is rehearsed, ready to go? You don't waste words? Or are you more of a premise guy where you just come up with an idea and you get on stage and talk about that idea?
I am kind of an in-between. I don't write anything down, unfortunately. I think I've gotten a little bit loose with my words. I used to be tighter. When I first met you, when I started out, I was much like more tight, more like shorter jokes. But that's because you don't know how to write a longer bit, and
right.
You don't have any time. You're just only doing 5 minutes, Even when I won those festivals, I probably had like 20, 25 minutes tops, and I was doing like 10-minute sets. So I was just, honing in on those particular jokes. But then you got a headline, you got to learn how to talk and build rapport and tell kind of an arc of a story over 45 minutes. And so you get more long-winded. But I have sort of I don't even know how I'm not even sure how I would define it, but I have an idea in my head, and it's kind of a premise type situation. And I like to think of it as like observational, but then I'm in the story.
Right.
Like my favorite comics right now are still the people that are just that next generation before me, even though they're younger people because I started so late, but like the Joe Lists and
Joe List is probably one of the funniest people I've ever heard.
Yeah. So those are observational jokes, but he's in them. So they're that's the perfect intersection. So it's like, it's making us an observational statement, but no one can copy that statement. Even if everyone's talked about potatoes, if you're in your own potato joke and it happened to you, then nobody can quite steal it, So like I have Uber, a whole bit on Uber, but I'm in the Uber bit and it's original to me and it happened to me. And so it's like, it's saying something about sort of society and how fucked up it is that we just get into people's cars that we don't know. Right. But I'm also the guy getting into the car, and I'm talking to the, you know what I mean? Like I had a bit like, you want to get into like the mechanics of like,
yeah, sure.
So this is like the thing with Uber. I wanted to write a joke about Uber. This is actually right after that Seattle festival, and I was like so sick of. I had all these food jokes for years, right?
I remember the pancake joke with the butter over the large screen TV.
Yeah, I had that whole thing, which has never worked. That's never been part of my act.
I love that joke.
Everybody loved it. It was like my big finale, and it only worked like 70% of the time, and so I had to can it because
man,
when your closer bombs, you just like
right.
You're just like diving into an empty swimming pool. So but I had so many food jokes, and I was like, I was at my heaviest weight back then. And so I just was really leaning into the food jokes. And so when the next year hit, I was trying to like start that year off, trying to lose weight and trying to write non-weight stuff. And Uber had just kind of really come on the scene. And I wrote like, I think every joke I have starts with like a one-liner. You have to get into the joke, and then I build it out from there. And the one line I said, I think the Uber joke started with, the Uber joke started with something like, isn't Uber insane? Like, who would have thought that in like, I think it was 2016, I wrote it, who would have thought that in 2016, literally anyone could realize their dream of being a taxi driver?
Right.
And I had never heard anyone have that take on it. A lot of people did hacky takes on it, but it was only a matter of time until somebody did have that take.
Right.
It was the unusual take, but in comedy, it's like a race to get to the, you never want to have the most obvious take. I mean, that's like, because everybody's going to have the first take and the second take and the third take, eventually. And that's why, like, you have to be super smart or super whatever. But that seemed like an interesting take. I still haven't really heard that take necessarily. But that doesn't, I'm not in that joke. I'm not in any part of it. It's still got a big laugh. And that was the joke for like maybe a year. That was it. It was like that. And then I tagged it with like, it's nice to see white people back in the, cab driving business where they have been so unfairly excluded.
Right.
And, and then it just was a bunch of stuff observationally. And then I added myself into it by saying that like, just this is random that we get into people's cars. It's just insane to me. And then I said, have you ever gotten into the wrong Uber? Because I did get into the wrong Uber once. And, then I'm in the joke, and actually it was because I was on the road and there was this guy, Steve Trevino, who's a pretty popular, he's actually a huge draw. He's from Texas. And he was like, he basically said that to me. He's like, you got to be in these jokes more. He loved me. He thought I was on, I should have been on TV or whatever, Yep. And I told him, I was like, I'm getting no fucking traction. And, he was like, you got to be on social media. You got to do it. And I was like, all right, I get it, And, but it was good. And he told me that. And I was like, so the joke now is like, there's a lot more to it. But basically I say I get into an Uber and I didn't realize it was the wrong Uber until the guy looks back at me and our eyes met. And he was like, get the fuck out of my car. And I was like, hey, look, take me to my destination. I'm paying for this, And we had a real misunderstanding that a couple of years ago it was just a carjacking.
Right.
And then, but there's like, and it's that sort of thing that just kind of, that builds up. And there's a whole thing on technology and, you just kind of find things that go, but I just developed it one piece at a time, kind of, just night after night after night, but I never, unfortunately, I don't write stuff down and I have a really hard time because I have terrible attention span issues. So I can't, unless I get up consistently, the ideas kind of float in my head. I write everything down kind of on like a note-taking program, which I have on my phone and it syncs to my it's called Evernote, it syncs to my laptop. But I don't, it's mainly like a word or a sentence or, kind of an idea. It's not,
Do you have a good, see, I don't have a great memory. Like I do have a great memory of like anything that happened from like 84 to 89.
Yeah.
If I like try to write a set, like a 15-minute set, I would forget half my jokes. It didn't matter how many times I would read them, so I used to have to write down, stuff in my water bottle,
Yeah.
So I could like go back there and like read in their water bottle, trying to figure out what I'm going to say next.
Yeah.
I don't know people that memorize like an hour. I don't know how anyone does an hour without looking at something.
Well, I always have my phone on my person with my list somewhere, I guess. But to be honest, and I think I've said this, I think Dana also probably, she always had her set list next to her, or
Right.
like either on her hand or something like that.
But Jerry Seinfeld does an hour. He doesn't have that.
What's that?
Like when I watch Seinfeld, a Seinfeld special, like he's doing an hour, no problem. And I don't know if they have a teleprompter, but he doesn't look around for anything. And I'm trying to figure out, like, this guy memorized a new hour special just like that.
Well, no, I mean, I don't take my phone out. I don't look my.
No, I know.
I could do my hour in right this second. I haven't been on stage in 3 months. It's just, honestly, it's just what it is.
Right.
You just weren't getting up enough.
I know. I don't like that part. I like getting up, but not actually getting up. I like the idea of getting up.
Yeah, the other part of it is just that if you know your hour back and forth, that probably also means that it's gotten stale.
Right.
So I write my hour is like 5-10 minute chunks and they're grouped in themes kind of. So they're like 5-10 minute sets or four 15-minute sets or something like that. I think I watched that movie Comedian or Road Comic or something like that, and some guy explained what a joke, a bit, and a chunk was.
Oh, interesting.
That's time where I got it, and a tag, because I didn't have a tag until like a year into my thing, and a tag is this amazing thing. It's right. A tag to your joke is just like printing money, right? Because you don't have to think of a new joke. You just have to think of a new line for the end of your.
What is it called again when you tell a joke like at the beginning of your set, right? And then you come back. Is it the circle back or something?
Callback.
The callback, yeah.
Yeah.
I can never do that. That's another thing. I'm like, I can never figure out how to do one of those.
Yeah.
Do you have that? Do you have that in your act?
Yeah. There's plenty of opportunities for it. What do I have for my? Yeah. Yeah, even I have a callback at the beginning of my first chunk, my first 10-minute set. Like I have a thing where I talk about now because the first part of your act, I always say if I would counsel somebody is to sort of the first part of your act usually kind of traditionally is sometimes it's like, this is what I look like, right? That's what your first, in fact, that's what I say sometimes when I get on stage. I'm like, my name is Al, this is what I look like.
Right.
And I say, it's not what I was hoping for. I look like a guy who, you know what I mean? Like I have a real softball league commissioner face, and then I literally at the end of my first chunk, I have this joke where like, I forget what it is, and I think it's an old joke. It's probably the 10-year-old joke that I just slipped back into my act. And it was like where I go to like if I'm at a doctor's office and somebody asks me, are you here for the diabetes seminar? I just go, yeah, probably, and then I put a tag on that joke that says, what time does it end? Because I got a softball league meeting at 4.
Right.
And that calls back to the thing. And then that's my first chunk. And then I go on to my food chunk, which is the next like 15 minutes. And then I have an Uber technology is, I'm old chunk. And then I have like a dating chunk. And then I have so it's, I don't know.
So you have a full hour now, right?
I mean, I have I do 45 pretty much. That's the headlining stuff,
Yeah. Now you opened up for were you opening up for Rob Schneider for a while, right?
I did I opened up for him once, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How does that happen? Did you know did he reach out to you or was it the club owner?
It was the Funny Bone. It was just the Funny Bone. Tom Dustin took me to the Funny Bone once as his opener. And then I talked to the club guy and got another weekend there. And it was like triple booked. So he booked some other. So I got there and it was there was another guy that got booked as the opener there. It was in Syracuse. And thankfully, I didn't know at the time. I was so blue. I was so like young, or not young, but I was so unaware that you had to even check in with the booker at the beginning or the club manager at the beginning of the week that I just drove to Syracuse after like not talking to them for 5 months. I just showed up on a Friday at the club. I was like, hey, I'm the host this week. And the guy was like, what? And then he was like, oh, I guess I remember writing your name in a book. And then, and then Rob Schneider, of course, brings his own guy.
Ooh.
And this manager was an idiot. He had already told some other guy that he was hosting for Rob Schneider that week. So he had 2 hosts and his own guy. And luckily, Rob was like, all right, well, we'll just keep everybody and just everybody does 5 minutes.
Oh, okay. Was that must have been a pretty cool experience, right?
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was kind of cool. It's weird. It's like, yeah, it's good. I mean, it's always strange opening for people like that. It's like, sometimes it's better than others. I've opened for a lot of people since then. Like you end up doing this thing for a while. You get your Screeches or your Chris Cattans or your,
Hey, you open up for Screech?
Oh yeah. Ask anybody in Boston who's opened up for fucking Screech at some point or other, or Paulie or,
Now, do you still get nervous at all? Or like the butterflies in the stomach before you get up on stage?
No, I mean, every once in a while. I did the Wilbur last year for opening for Ryan Hamilton.
Okay.
And I'm a Ryan Hamilton fan, and he's great. And it's one of those things where, and I had family in the crowd. I had my girlfriend and her friend in the crowd, and it's a theater, and I've always wanted to play there. And
right.
So I was a little nervous for that, and I also knew that he wanted me to do exactly 20 minutes, and I didn't have a time. I didn't have a clock. I didn't have a light. So I had to, so it was just a weird setup. He opens for Jerry.
Yeah.
And he kind of he looks like Jerry, kind of sounds like Jerry. So I think he's kind of a disciple, and Jerry doesn't have a clock either. Jerry's very strict on time. I did 21 and he never even sent me an email back when I told him. I sent him a thank you email and I killed. I mean, he does. Yeah. He brought me out on stage to give me a curtain call after his set, which is really, I think, was very nice.
Right.
But I sent him a thank you email like the next day. Nothing special, just thanks for having me. Hope I get to work with you again. And never heard from him again. But I was nervous for that, and I'm nervous whenever family and friends come, but not for my set or performance, more so for the room. Hopefully nobody gets drunk, or like I know how to do. You do it 10,000 fucking times. It's like falling out of bed. But the problem is, and this, if somebody's a dick or the mic doesn't work or whatever, the issue is that your family or your friends might come out to one show. Mm-hmm. And if the show sucks, and there's so many ways comedy can suck for one night.
Does that throw you off when if you have a heckler or someone yelling out from the crowd at all?
No, I can handle that. It's just that some shows are just like, you know how it is. You go to a comedy show, a great comedy show, you're like, this is the best art form there ever is.
Right.
And a mediocre comedy show, and you're just like, So you could see me on a Tuesday, do the exact same thing, and be like, you should not probably do this for a living. And then you could see the same act in a different setting, and I could be have just as good a performance myself, but it's a better setting, better crowd, better energy. And you could be like, this guy is amazing, and I can't help. There's things that are beyond my control that I can't help. Right. You try to steer your family and friends to come to the Wilbur or to come to the, a Saturday night early show at a good club, instead of a Friday night shit show at a bad club or whatever. But they are going to come when they come, and So.
Yeah, I mean, well, laughter's contagious. You need a good crowd. I was at a show once where my friend and I were in the audience, and a comic got up there who I had never heard of, and he had some like Andy Kaufman shtick going on where it was kind of weird, but I thought it was hilarious, like at like a different level. And me and my friend were dying laughing. No one else in the crowd's laughing. Yeah. Like it was literally silent. I mean, I went up to him afterwards. I'm like, hey, I thought you were hilarious. And he's like, yeah, there's sometimes the crowd they just don't. He's like, if one person doesn't get it, it could kill the whole room for me. But I thought that was interesting. I wish I got his name because this is probably like 15 years ago. But yeah, no, you're right. I mean, all it takes is a couple of bad people, a couple of people that aren't laughing, and the room, the energy, you lose the energy in the room. But I have a hard time believing that ever happens to you.
Well, I guess what I mean is just it does. I mean, I get angry and I get kind of internally. I just try to block it out. But yeah, I don't know. I'm just hard on myself. Yeah. I mean, I think I'm like with all things, and I think that's how you get good at comedy. Is you can't just go up there and think, oh, I'm real good, or like you can't think. You got to be really aware of the person that's not having fun, or be self-critical to think that your jokes need to get better or whatever. But also you get hardened too if you're doing a lot of shows and you're just like you consistently see something is wrong. You ever see like Goldman get angry, or somebody like pro get angry at the just
I haven't, but
no. Because you do something 100 times, sometimes you just get up there. Or like as a headliner, if I get to a show, I've never like when I was young, you're just so fucking happy to drive 300 miles.
Yeah, right.
Do 5 minutes in Maine.
Yeah.
But sometimes, somebody's like, come out to my great show, and they'll give me a certain amount of money, and I'll be like, I don't have anything on my calendar, and I'll do it, and I'll get out there, and you just walk into the building, and you're like, why did I drive to this, And then you see they built like 14 shitty open micers before you.
Right.
You're just kind of like, oh, this is not going to be. So you're just like, all right, it's going to be, I'm going to stay here for 3 hours. By the time I get up on stage, there's going to be half this crowd is going to be left. They're all going to be very, very tired and have seen an hour and, 50 minutes of some of the worst comedy imaginable. And, so, and then I got a long drive home, and I'm like, and the money is, I'm starting to think about like maybe I should not have, No,
I mean it is a lot of work. Do you ever wish that you started when you were like 17, 18? I do. I mean, I wish I just put 100% into it right after high school.
I try not to think about that because I also think I might have drank myself to death or done something. I might have been. True. I might have partied too hard. I probably would have. So that's But yeah, I mean, you think about my age, I would have been with a different group of people who are a lot of whom were famous now, and if I feel like have a talent level that I could have been in a group of people. But there's also people who are just as talented as me, who are my age, who were with those people, who are not among the famous people too. So, and everybody makes choices. It's not just, there's part of it is luck, and then part of it is, did you want to go to New York City? Did you want to make those sacrifices? Did you want to do so? Did you have your shit together? Did you control your drink and drug intake? And did you, so yeah, I don't know. I try not to be like regretful. I think I probably didn't have my shit together. If I had my shit together, I would have been doing it. If I had known,
maybe you wouldn't have been as good.
That's also true. I probably had more to talk about, but I didn't have my shit together. I think I knew I wanted to be a comedian. I don't know if I ever told you this. I actually took a class at comedy right when I graduated college. I took a stand-up class in LA. When I moved to LA, randomly moved to LA right when I graduated college. I took a corporate job, and then I took a class in Santa Monica. It was the same class that Anthony Jeselnik took, and a lot of other comics that have ended up being pretty famous, from this guy that wrote this book, I think, Step by Step Stand Up. But he does a Monday night class in LA, and it was like weekly, and you learn how to do it, And I took maybe, I don't know, there was like a 10-week class, and I did the first 4 weeks, but I was so tired from my corporate job, and I was like driving, after 10, 12 hours of work, I was driving there. And I think it was just before we started to have to show our work, and I was slacking. I wasn't writing jokes, and I was self-conscious, and I had a lot of fear, and so I think I just stopped going after like four or five sessions. And that is when I was probably 23.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I went to like 4 classes, and I didn't go again. I didn't even think about it. I mean, I always knew, and people always told me that, and then I didn't do it again until I, quit drinking, and I was 37.
Wow.
36.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I mean, regardless of whatever path you took, I mean, you're honestly one of the funniest people I've ever seen on stage. Like, even people that I've paid a lot of money to see. Like, it's interesting because I've seen, Jerry Seinfeld was like my idol growing up, but I've seen him live 4 or 5 times, and I've never laughed as much as I have from his early stuff. When he first came out with, on Letterman and Johnny Carson, with all the when he was doing like the observational stuff, when he first was doing the show Seinfeld. And now I feel like even his last special, I'm like, I feel like he kind of mailed it in a little bit, but
yeah, maybe it's just hard to, I don't know. Like, think about all the bands you watch, like how hard is it to, like, you can't put out 10 great albums,
No, you're right. Absolutely. No, it's true.
At some point, that same shtick isn't going to necessarily be this. It's not going to feel as fresh, like, I don't think there's a comic I've ever really gotten into where, I don't, because at some point you sort of begin to, you kind of see through it. You hear the formula and the rhythm, and suddenly the formula doesn't work as well for you. And,
yeah, that's interesting. That is interesting. What about Carlin?
I don't know. I've never been a huge Carlin guy. It's just not my, I've never had the kind of patience. I love the early stuff, I guess, in terms of like when I hear it and watch it, I think he's an incredible performer, but I've never like, it's exhaustive, but I've never gotten super,
who did you like, when you were younger?
I was a huge Cosby fan.
Okay. Hey, I just bought my kids Fat Albert toys today, so.
Yeah, I just thought that he was the greatest. My grandpa loved Cosby, so I loved Cosby. I loved Jonathan Winters and Robin Williams and things like that. I loved Richard Pryor and things, but I wasn't necessarily like a huge stand-up. I watched like those HBO Young Comic specials. But I wasn't like how nowadays they have comedy nerds and comedy, like, when we were kids, I don't think there just wasn't that same level of like I was music.
You kind of knew who they were though, because like you said, there weren't that many, and they all had like Paul Reiser does one set, he gets mad about you. It's so funny looking back at how old these people were when they got like a major sitcom. after doing stand-up for just a few years.
Yeah, and we know so much about stand-up. There's so many podcasts. You can just get so deeply into stand-up now. And back then, so what I got into was like music. I just got way into music. Like I read all these music magazines, and I had like every single album of a Hendrix album, and I was way into the Dead and Neil Young and all these other like '60s bands, and I read every book and did all that stuff. But you couldn't and I read like about Steve Martin and stuff like that. But you didn't have podcasts, and you didn't have like all this sort of stuff. So it wasn't like you could, it wasn't exhaustive in the same way that you can get into comedy now. Even 10 years ago, when I started, there was like a few books you could read,
right?
And you could listen to WTF with Mark Maron, but that was like the beginning of podcasts, And so, like if you started stand up today, it'd almost be hard to write jokes. You'd just be sitting there fucking listening to, everyone's goddamn comedy podcast and trying to, but if you were smart about it, you could probably speed your progress up quite a bit, and find out who really good joke writers are and good right away.
I mean, because the barrier to entry right now is so low, it does make it a lot harder to even have a semblance of like it's not. I don't think it's hard if you were trying to make if you want to make money if you were in it to make money, like you can give me somebody can give me a call. I can help you make money. You can go to rent out VFWs in the suburbs where they don't want to drive into the city, and you could put on a show once a month and make yourself $1,000 if you right. But if you're in it to make people laugh and go into the art form, the barrier to entry is low, and there, like you said, there's a lot of stuff out there that I'm like, oh man, is that funny? Like people laugh at that, and and then there's a lot of stuff that you just can't really say. I don't know, can't really form jokes the way that you would want to because the attention span is just not there anymore. Like they'd rather Snapchat 7 seconds. They're making stuff funny in 7 seconds. I don't know how they do it, but apparently people laugh at it.
Yeah, but what's funny is that there are always people your own age too.
Right.
So it's like I mean, it's not like you can't find the people that are your age that do. It's hard because I think I've battled with that a lot too. Because when I started and I was 36, I think I told the story before. I was starting with a bunch of people who were 26 or 25, and I think I didn't realize until maybe that Seattle festival that I wasn't the same age as them. You know what I mean? Because I started at the same time as them. So I just thought I was the same age as them. And then I didn't realize I was perceived differently.
Oh, that's interesting.
Okay. You know what I mean? Like I just didn't realize until then. And I just remember I was in a car with a bunch of comics one time, and one of them said to me, Al, you must know a lot of dead people. I was like, oh, I don't know a lot of dead people, but yeah, I guess that, that makes sense. And I was like, oh, this guy's like, oh, I could be as, I was like 15 or 18 years older than this kid. And I was like, because there used to be just one kid. It was like Cam McNeil, and he was like 17. And he was the only kid that I was like, I could be this kid's father. And now it's like, that's like half the fucking people in this.
Right.
And I don't even look old I'm 46. I don't even look that old, but I literally could be, half these kids' fathers. And,
well, you know what happens? Because I'm 42. Yeah. I think we just forget how old we are. Like I talk to people who are like 25. I'm like, I think I'm 25 still. I'm like, I'm still like the same stuff I probably liked when I was 25. And then you're like, wait a second, maybe I am 42 because I can't keep up with anybody anymore.
Yeah. Well, you feel it physically, but you don't feel it mentally. And
right. And I wonder if that ever changes. I wonder when you're like 60, if you know that you're 60, or if you consciously, or if you still like the same thing as you would when you're like, someone's like, what are you doing Friday night? Like, what are we doing Friday night? And they're like, wait a second, I can't go out Friday night. I'm 60. I'll be exhausted.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing I try to think about is I've always tried to write jokes that don't age me. And that's like, I have a whole bit about weed now, and I'm really trying hard not to be that, because there's those comics, you see them and they're just like that, the back in my day comic, or the kids these days. And I don't believe that there's a difference between people of a certain age. It's such a big thing when you get to be older. people look at younger kids, and it's very easy to do. It's pretty hard sometimes not to look at people who say I'm triggered or whatever. People who look at, to look at a younger generation that may be more sensitive or whatever and say that these people have changed. This whole generation, they haven't changed. They're the same fucking people we were. What's changed is that it's a different world, and they're just reacting to a different world. There's a different set of circumstances, and it's like we're blaming people for we're saying, oh, you're softer. Like they got up in the morning, decided to be fucking softer. I mean, maybe if you had Call of Duty or whatever you had and 17 other options to not get up and, oh, these kids can't change a tire. Maybe they don't have to fucking change. Maybe they don't have to change a tire or do any of this shit. And so they are softer, but it's not their fault, And so, but that's, people get away with that act still, kids wearing helmets and doing this shit. And
I'll tell you what I find interesting about that is that it's people that are in our age group that have that mindset, right? And the reality is, it's our friends, our peers, are their parents. So they obviously are the reason. If you believe that, then you'd be the reason that that's happening because you raised them, right? I mean,
yeah, and I understand why, because then you see some of them. It's just the way that people in the 80s, old people in the 80s, saw a kid with blue hair or
right. Oh yeah, absolutely the same.
And we're just like, what the fuck is this? And it's so easy to sort of be reactive and not think of that. And I think the funnier thing to me, like if you think about Bill Burr, is just such a think of the voice of Bill Burr, right? Bill Burr could just be the ultimate, and he is sometimes just the ultimate, what the fuck is this? This is ridiculous. But then Bill Burr takes these weird other angles of things and then surprises you by taking the other side of something and actually kind of a smart way. And by the end of it, sometimes you're like, oh yeah, he's actually, there's a depth there because he's not just taking the easy answer that kids are soft,
right?
And he's saying, oh well, maybe they're not soft, or maybe they're not. And so I think there's an empathy. If you have an empathy and you have an understanding of something, you can come. I'm not saying my fucking comedy has gotten anywhere close to this. I'm just saying
yep.
And this all came out of the thing I was really trying to say is that I've tried to stay away from that age stuff in my comedy, to be truthful, just so people wouldn't pigeonhole me. But at some point you have to own the fact that you're old, and you have to find your audience. And maybe that's what you're, even as you're trying to be empathic or whatever, you do have to kind of be like, I am, fucking my body is breaking down or whatever. I just don't want to lose those. For a while it was like, I didn't want to lose industry.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want industry to think I was actually the age I was, because being bald and being, not super wrinkly, I think I can still pass for 40 most days, or 38 or whatever I used to, maybe not right now, but I've noticed in the last couple of years, I get to the studio on a night and I see 22-year-olds, sometimes they just fucking don't even look at me, and so at some point you kind of have to, but you have to kind of just let them go, but you never want to lose anybody. You want to be Gaffigan. You want to be some sort of universal thing, because that's the ultimate thing. You don't want to, but you also don't want to pretend you're, 15 years younger than you are, or try to hold on to something, that you're not. And you don't want to limit yourself either. If you just find that all day you're writing about how easy it is to get weed and that it makes you angry, which it does, and it's funny, I think that's, that's fair game. And I think younger people are kind of laughing at that, and I try not to make myself look old. And when I say that, but I have to say it because it's true.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, who's your typical audience? I mean, I would think that most comedy audiences, depending on where you're playing, are probably 30 plus, right? 35 plus, probably. People, looking for a night out on the town, couple.
Yeah, I mean, I try to think I do pretty well among, pretty wide spectrum. I mean, there's a lot of the food jokes, the weight joke, things like that. People like always things that are universal. When I try to get too smart for my own good, maybe that kind of loses some people, I guess. But yeah, I just think
When you play the Midwest, do you change up anything for when you go out there?
Not really. I mean, I had a joke about Trump for a while that I still have, but it's just, and I still do it, but it works, out there.
Yep.
But it wasn't a great. It's still not a great joke, but it's kind of, and it's kind of anti-Trump, I guess. But it's just, you know, it's also, um, yeah, it's not an angry joke. I don't think you can. I'm just not an angry comic, even if I'm angry about stuff, But
Right.
so,
Well, that's a tough persona to pull off. I mean, especially for you. I mean, right? Because your persona is that you're the likable guy. You want right. The audience is going to be on your side from the moment you introduce yourself. You know.
yeah, I mean, I guess I just try to be me, I mean,
Right.
for lack of a better word. And I'm not always in a fucking good mood off stage. I'm a little bit of a neurotic, self-critical, depressed dude, but I love being on stage, and I think it's just something about that, that feeling is just amazing, and what's funny is just stuff that's funny is funny, and it's like a discovery when you have a great joke. You want to There's an excitement about sharing it, and and I do think a lot of stuff is not funny, and I do think that the stuff I say is funny, and so I enjoy the fact that it kills, when it does kill, and I also have a chip on my shoulder sometimes because I did start late, and
Right.
and I have been, maybe I think sometimes I have been overlooked, and so I love to kill a fucking room, and I love to follow a young kid or I love it when I go to LA or something like that, and I show up and they're like, this guy is some fucking VFW uh, dumpy fucking bald dude, and I you know do really really well written sharp stuff, and I've noticed I've done that before, and you know how it is, like at a comedy open mic or whatever, you come in, you don't know this guy, but then when somebody goes up on stage and does their thing, and then they come off and you look at them totally differently, and so I love that feeling when you level a really good, because I can get on the good shows there because I know all the good comedians in the city,
Right.
and they can vouch for me, and so somebody will get me on a show, and then I'll get on a show, but then I'll show up and they'll be, this guy's on Conan, and this guy's on this, and this guy's on that, and then this is Al Park, he won a festival 6 years ago, you know or he was on Laughs on Fox or whatever, and they don't even look at me, they don't know me, whatever, but then I will go up and I'll be as good or better, and at the end of it, they have an absolute respect, and I love that because that's maybe it's because I have a chip on my shoulder because I didn't move to LA and I'm not young, but that's, to me, that's the equalizer in comedy. If you're funny, you're funny.
What is your ultimate? What is your ultimate goal? I mean, what would be like the pinnacle for you?
This is it, Ed. Right now. Right fucking now.
I like that. I mean, are you looking to be like I mean, what is the pinnacle anymore? I don't even know. I mean, it used to be ABC, get an ABC sitcom, but those don't even exist anymore. So, like, what is the pinnacle now? Being a touring comedian, which you are,
Well, I mean, I think the pinnacle is just trying to be a happy person in general. I think it's a hard. One thing I have learned is that there's a lot of miserable people who do this professionally, and that's, I think, what I meant when I was talking about, um, the joy of comedy versus the business of comedy.
Right.
I met some very, very well-known people, and they'll be like, well, what do you do? You're making $100 a show here. You had to fly to Tampa. You're getting put up in a fucking, a jizz covered fucking condo. Like what's in it for you? How are you, like, you're breaking even? What do you do when you're not doing that? And I'm like, well, I have this day job thing, and I've got a health plan. That you're like, you have a health plan? And I'm like, you were on 3 shows last year, And they're like, well, dude, they're like, don't quit that day job. That's a good deal. And because what I'll be like is, well, yeah, I work remotely so I can travel, and I've had people that I couldn't even believe just be like, wait, you can work from home, like, you're working back at the hotel, you're making money right now. I'm like, yeah, I'm making money, And he's like, and you do comedy? I'm like, yeah, I do. Which I think is ridiculous because obviously the goal is to not have to have a second job to do comedy. but I think sometimes the business is so harsh. Right now is a perfect example. Is no matter how much money you have, if you're not bringing money in, there's no like health plan for comics necessarily. Maybe they have a SAG card and they have some health there, but everybody's hurting. You know, you're constantly, it's variable year to year. You get on a show, you're making money. You're off a show. You know, I worked with Dave Keckner from The Office.
Okay.
And he's just like he is. You'd think he is. You know, and that was a thrill. Like Rob Schneider, sure, but like hanging out with David Keckner was just really cool. You know, you get a photo. He's fucking, you know, Rick Tamlin from The Office or whatever, or the you know, from the Anchorman, and you know, the what's his name from The Office, and just like, you know, we were literally walking around the mall and eating pancakes and fucking, you know, and just talking about like the CBS show he was on, and how he's trying to get the people back to do an Office spinoff, and just the business of it. And he's like, and I got to pay bills, man. And I was really getting, you know, just the mechanics of like, he's like, I was filling these rooms last year when I was on this show, and now I'm not. And, you know, like every level, people are constantly, it's like you've got to continue to sell your shit. And when you have a fucking job at a healthcare company or whatever, maybe not in this economy, you know, there is less of that kind of anxiety over it. You know, so except for those acts that just like Seinfeld or whatever, where you're just printing money and you're at a certain level where you banked it. So to me, the ultimate goal, getting back to your question, would be to be an act that draws and be at that point where I have done it for long enough that I have put enough money in the bank so that if I get Me Too'd or we have another coronavirus, I am okay.
Yeah. Here's what I'll tell you. So I love, first off, I think that you are at a level where obviously you are a draw, right? Because I'm a fan. I'm like,
and no one has ever come to see me on purpose.
That can't be true.
It's true.
And I would well, if that's the case, then the problem. See, you have half the battle though. You have someone sees you one time, they go, "That was a great show. That was well worth the money." So you have half that battle. Now you got to solve the other battle, which is the publicity. That's the easy part. Anybody with a little bit of money can make themselves famous, right? It's like Jerry Seinfeld talks about it in the show Comedian, the documentary Comedian that came out in the 90s, where he says, "I'm Jerry Seinfeld. They're going to give me like 2 minutes of their time at the beginning of the show. And if I happen to suck, well, then they're going to boo me. Someone who they never heard of before, they get like 15 seconds. So you have that part solved."
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, a lot of the reason why I continued to work over time is because I had to pay back my grad degree loan. I was stuck kind of in a financial bind, so I had to work full time and for a long time, and that's kind of ended. And but like we were talking before we started here, I'm you know, it's a tough time for people right now. I'm fortunate to have a job, and comedy is not happening. So I was in preparations to actually kind of go back to more of a traveling thing, more road, more gigs, and record an album this year. And put the other thing that I do, the work, the type of work that I do as a day job, I can do that freelance. I can do that for my own, you know, on a very part-time basis. But I was about to do that, and then this whole thing hit, and I was like, you know, I've got money coming in, and I have all my gigs. I was doing Boston Calling Festival. I had theater gigs lined up on the East Coast. I had Funny Bone dates. I had a good schedule coming in, and a pretty lucrative one this spring. And you know, I was going to start doing some cruise gigs. Ironically enough, you know, I was like, don't
do the cruise.
So, you know, those are pretty lucrative. That was something I was talking to a guy about and thinking about doing that. And you know, so obviously with this, none of that shit is happening. But I was also thinking, put out an album in fall, get rid of that first hour of material, force myself to really bear down and get to that next chunk and get back to really to doing this. But you know, that's all kind of taking a step back for now. but that's always there, and that's so I have to sort of figure that out for myself. But I think that's the thing, when people see me live, when I'm there, I definitely, I definitely get that. That's the greatest thing. I mean, after the show's a good show and people, send you messages, or you get Facebook friends or whatever it is, that's never been the problem. I do think that's true. I'm like what they call an experience good. You got to experience it to see it. I just haven't figured out how to get people to like see the poster and be like, or was it this? And be like, I want to see that, whatever that fucking guy has to say. And,
well, yeah, I mean, well, it's like, see, it's kind of like Sebastian Manacuso, right? I didn't know who he was 2 years ago. Yeah. And then I started seeing these like 30-second clips on Facebook all over the place. And next thing you know, it's like, wait a second, this guy's kind of funny. Like, and you'd see him every single day. There'd be an ad here, an ad there, right? And all of a sudden, now he's blown up all because we have to get you a team. We have to get you a social media team, because Al Park you need to be the next big thing. You are the next big thing. You're already there.
Funny Sebastian Maniscalco story is just before he got huge. This is also about 4 years ago. He was at the Comedy Connection on a Wednesday night, and those guys, I like those guys. They asked me to open for him, and so I went down and I opened for him, and he did 2 shows, and I'd never heard of the fucking guy. This is before he was starting to play theaters.
Okay,
but he had already had a couple of YouTube videos, and he had a huge but very niche Italian American following.
Yep.
Because of those videos that he did that are about like my Italian family does this, and my Jewish wife, and so they had like 600,000 views on YouTube already, but he still wasn't a huge draw, but he was starting to really pack weekends, like sell out weekends. So he was at the stage where he wasn't even doing a weekend. He was doing one-nighters on a Wednesday at clubs,
Right.
So he did a one-nighter, sold out 2 shows at the Comedy Connection. And I have never seen that place so packed in my entire life. And when a comedy club like that, a real comedy club, is packed like that, it's a slow pitch softball. I've never killed harder in my fucking life. I thought I had the best. I might have had the best set of my life, but it certainly felt like it. I just walking on clouds. I meet him. He's a nice guy. I meet him. I just fucking destroy. And I go back, and he's like, you're fucking killed it. So I know I did great,
Yeah.
I'd never even seen him. I knew he had a following. I just thought maybe he's a whatever. He goes up, and I watched him, and a lot of comics shit on him because he's like a lot of like act outs and kind of goofy. And I stood in that like bank vault area. Have you ever been to the Comedy Connection? I stood there and I watched him, and I like highbrow comedy, I'd never seen him. I watched him, from the bar station, maybe 20 feet away. And I've never laughed harder in my life. I forgot I was a comedian maybe 30 seconds in, and I had tears pouring down my eyes. I've never seen a better performer in my life, and I've never seen anybody that just mesmerized me with his presence. And I was just blown away. It was the best comedy show I've ever seen in my entire life, before, during, or since.
Really?
And yeah. And I couldn't even believe it. And I don't think he's the funny, he just had this thing. He's got that.
His joke writing, it's okay. But the way that he acts everything out is unbelievable. It's hilarious.
And to see it live was just like, it kind of probably reminded me of like what people saw in Dane Cook.
Right.
In that era when you were a teenager and you saw Dane Cook kind of do the thing, whatever it was 3-dimensional when everybody else is just sitting at a fucking mic with their sayings.
Yeah.
He was just fucking doing this and doing that. And
that must be so tough to get to that point, man. I pull my back out. I ever tried to do it.
And everybody had this laughter of recognition, that's it, right? That's the thing. They just were laughing like, I know how true this is. And they fucking loved him. And he came off stage and he's like, dude, that was fun. And I almost wish he was worse, because I just started, I was just like, it was great. So he talks to me, he goes, hey man, you're great. what's your story? Are you around? Are you you professional? You doing this a lot? And he was like, I was like, yeah, I can. Whatever. We start talking. He's like, you got a car? Can you go to Jersey? Can you get to Jersey?
You just sound just like.
I was like, yeah, I get to fucking Jersey. I got 11 dates at Go Bananas in 2 weeks. And then I got a bunch of stuff other than there. And man, you killed it. Let me see, how you do second show, whatever, but you're doing great, man. And then he went back to his, he's like, and then he went back to his thing. And I think he just wanted to be left alone after that. But he's like, yeah, I'll get your information. But yeah, I'd love, let's do, And I was like, I want to be this fucking guy's opener. Suddenly I'm thinking I got 11 dates.
Oh,
I'm going to start opening for this guy. But I just started talking to him about how good a set he had. I'm like a fucking fanboy. I start talking his ear off. And in retrospect, I realized he was kind of like, he was like writing notes from his show. And then he was like, oh, yeah. Going back down. I go out the second show. I destroy the second show. At the end of the night, I'm like, oh, yeah. So what's your number? And he's like, oh, yeah, I'll get your information. You give me your information.
Really?
So I think I talk too much, and I never heard from him. So as a bummer of a story. I still think he's And the next time he came through town, he was at the Wilbur, and then he did 3 shows at the Wilbur, and then he's at the Garden. And, but yeah, so that's the thing I learned after that is just never fucking. You can't.
We gotta get you a spot like Al Park at the Wilbur.
Yeah.
I can see it. I can see it now. Who's not going to that show?
A lot of people are not going to that show.
I think I met the first time I met you was at the Banshee, right? I believe it was open.
Right, yeah.
It was open mic at the Banshee. Within 1 minute, I was like talking to somebody else. I remember I wasn't even looking at the stage. I was talking to somebody else, and I remember thinking to myself, "Man, this guy." I looked up and I go, "This guy's a star." I know he is. And you're almost there, but you're not there yet. But you're gonna be. I think you're gonna get there, man. We just gotta get you that social media team.
Yeah, we'll see. I love doing it, and I just can't wait till it comes back. And
Now, will you go and do a show?
What's that?
Will you perform like once comedy clubs open, or are you like, maybe I want to wait?
I mean, yeah, of course. I don't know. I mean, we'll see what happens with the.
Yep.
But yeah, I don't think there's any reason. You can't just follow protocols. I'm worried that cases are going to rise and everything like that. I'm worried for people's health. I don't want to contribute to the problem, but if things are done right and people are distanced and absolutely. But yeah. But I got a good life, I'm living with my girlfriend now, and we've been together for years, and she's we have a great place, and that's the thing. I hope that live comedy continues, and I want to absolutely. It's not like I've given up or anything like that. I just want to keep being. I want to get that next hour. I want to figure out how to be this. That's the beauty of comedy. It's just this amazing way to think about life, and I want to get so much better the next 10 years. And, I think about one-man shows. I think about, writing a script or something like that. I just have to figure out for my own sake how to learn, better time management and, maybe eventually how to not have a job that takes up so much of my time so that I can focus on those other things that I need to do. And I think that's going to happen. That was the plan, obviously, before the world went to fucking shit here with the virus, and I think it will be pretty soon. But comedy's fucking. That's the thing. You can go out tomorrow. Dana can go out. We can all go out, and there's no barrier to entry. We can't now, but we can pick it up or take it. It's just like golf, for lack of a better analogy, except it's creatively fulfilling and it gives you back what you put into it creatively.
Well, I'll tell you, 2020, I was like, I'm gonna go back to doing comedy. One of the reasons I stopped was because I was having anxiety problems and it got really, really bad. And I was like, I don't think I want to get up there anymore. And I'm like 2020, I'm feeling good. I want to start doing it. And then obviously, so I'm like, I'm going to do this, this little show here until we can open things up, I guess. But do you think people are having problems writing jokes now because nothing's happening? Like I listen to the radio, talk radio. They have nothing to talk about.
Yeah, I think that's tough. It's tough without fucking sports. No sports is hard. I had a show. I got booked for a corporate gig about 3 weeks ago, oddly enough, on Zoom,
Oh,
and I
really?
was totally fucking. I was totally. I almost turned it down, and but it was only 10 minutes opening up for some corporate comedian guy who just does PowerPoint stuff, which is way better translated for
Technology.
Zoom. Yeah. Um, but what's funny about it is that having the gig forced me to write because I just couldn't show up on Zoom and be like, how about ice cream? You have to be like, how fucking weird is this? So
Right.
I wrote Zoom jokes, I wrote COVID jokes, and I wrote some stuff that I ended up being pretty proud of, and it really made me realize how much I love comedy and how much I miss it. And unfortunately, I haven't had that same thing because that's the other thing is that the stage kind of keeps you honest.
I wonder how many like the jokes that I do write are like actually like true thoughts that I have. Like it wasn't even. I guess it's a Zoom joke, Zoom thought. But I tweeted out my biggest fear now is dying during a Zoom meeting because like I literally had that thought. I'm like, what if I had a heart attack during a Zoom meeting? Like, what would people say? Like,
Yeah,
and I'm sure it's going to happen. Someone's going to die during a Zoom meeting.
yeah.
Like, how does that company recover from that? Like,
I think my first joke was about Zoom was just like, I think we're getting to know too much about what people's houses look like that we work with, and I don't want to go to my next performance review and have somebody be like, Al, we know you're doing clearly you've demonstrated in your job performance that you're doing enough to be promoted, but I think we can all agree that your kitchen needs an upgrade.
right.
Something like I forget what it was. I worded it a lot better, but and
Now, were they muted or were they? How does
they had a sound guy, and they were not muted, but they were really polite. And what was interesting is I could see myself in the corner, and I could sort of and they were one of those things where they would come up. The person that it was that I had it on that speaker view where the occasionally different people who were laughing would come up onto this big
okay.
part of the screen. So that was nice, and actually watching myself was kind of good because I could sort of see if I looked uncertain, and I was able to project a confidence and get over that kind of silence kind of thing, and the fact that it was 10 minutes, and it was good money for 10 minutes, and you know, but yeah, I had a couple jokes that were just like, and I didn't have to worry about it. And I was like, if I bomb, I bomb because I just have to get off this fucking Zoom, that I'm on. I don't have to
Right.
sit on shit, and I'd have to collect the money I didn't organize it, so I'd have to collect the money from the corporate dude and apologize for how bad an idea it was to book comedy, which is so often the case for these corporate gigs. I just have to bomb through no fault of my own. And then as I'm collecting the check, I have to be like, listen, next year, don't book comedy.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. Here's my vision. What's going to happen? Comedy clubs won't open in 2020 is what I think is going to. And I think what will happen is you'll be doing them in those open amphitheaters type of thing where the stage is lower. Like if you were going to like one of those like a crocodile wrestling thing at like Disney World where the audience is above the stage. Do you know what I mean? That's what, right? Because it has to be outdoors, and that's what I think is going to end up being the new thing. Because I don't know if you want to do comedy in front of an audience where there's they can only be half capacity. Because I mean, aren't the owners going to lose money if that's the case?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think basically we just got to get we got to get the vaccine, and people got to take the vaccine, and we just got to get back to some kind of normal. And my whole thing, same with global, warming and shit. At this point, I was banking on nerds, I'm just banking on a technology solution because I don't think we can trust, normal humans to behave in a cooperative way at this point. We're messy.
I was telling somebody, I'm like, I wish I was born in 1930. I would have missed this.
That's the thought I have. I try not to have regrets about my own life, but I do sometimes think about, boy, 1940, ish is a good, like when my folks were born ish, like a little bit before then is a fucking great. There's some great. I mean, Vietnam notwithstanding, but like 1935, 1940.
If you were born in 40, you would have been too old for Vietnam, right? So you
Yeah,
would have missed both the wars.
40 is a pretty sweet time.
Yeah,
I think, but it's a definite,
now we have to deal with it. Basically wasting 1 year of my life gone. 2012. Although I got this thing going, so I can't complain.
Yeah.
So
you got kids, you got a family, you got a lot of action figures.
A lot of action figures. Yep. I have been spending a ton of time with my kids, and right now that's my demographic. All of my jokes play really well to like kindergarten, first grade. So if you have any gigs for first graders, let me know. I could definitely could do a solid 10 minutes on Roblox and Peppa Pig. So
that's good.
Well, cool, man. Hey, thank you so much for coming on tonight. I appreciate it. It was good to catch up with you. And maybe we'll see each other in person someday.
I hope so, man. And definitely when things get started again, hit me up and come out to a show or go out and start telling some jokes again.
All right, buddy. We'll see you later.
All right, man. Take care.
Al Park, everybody. Go see him live. Best comedian I've ever seen. We'll see you. Take care, buddy.